SCCA's National Championship RunOffs has long been a launching pad to professional careers for some, an annual pilgrimage for many, and a bucket list event just to compete in for all. This weekend, it is also a test extraordinaire, as for the contenders, Sonoma Raceway awaits.
Greetings from Sonoma Raceway in the 55th running of the Sports Car Club of America National Championship RunOffs. Hello everyone, I'm Ryan Marine. Joining me in the booth for the GT1 class race here today is longtime SCCA member Larry McLeod, who was the SCCA Solo Nationals Kart Modified Class Champion earlier this year, and we'll have Hayward Wagner along in a little while working the pit lane for us in this race today. Well, we get things started here with GT1. Larry, it is an exciting field, just 8 cars in the field, but this is an event, these SCCA RunOffs, that mean a great deal to the competitors. It really does not matter how many cars are in the field. We expect the competition to be tight, and we expect as well the emotions to be very high. As Greg said so well in that open, this event, it means a lot to every one of these competitors.
Yeah, it really does. Nothing really gets the juices flowing first thing in the morning than National Championship RunOffs. And at a track like this, here in Sonoma, the backdrop of the hillsides and the wineries, it is absolutely beautiful, gorgeous, and what better venue than to have a real driver's track like the Sonoma Raceway.
It is a perfect setting. Amazingly, the first time this venue has hosted the SCCA RunOffs, but to a man and woman, every driver I've spoken with here this weekend, they absolutely relish the challenge that is Sonoma Raceway, and that's going to be a storyline throughout all of our races. The challenge of this circuit, the grip level of the track, it is low. That puts a great premium on car control, and it's also one of those tracks that the horsepower isn't necessarily the deciding factor. It comes down to driver skill. We'll talk a great deal about that throughout our broadcast this weekend. Let's get down to pit lane in our third member of the broadcast crew, Hayward Wagner.
Morning, I'm with Joe Gilder, the crew chief for Mike Lewis in this GT1 race. Joe, you guys had a good qualifying session. What's the race strategy like?
Well, just to try to stay out front and just see what we can do, see if we can lead the whole race.
We heard a lot of chatter going on about the track record, trying to take a shot at it here. You feel pretty confident on that one?
Yeah, I think we got a pretty good car. I think we got a shot for the track record.
All right, guys, going for a track record here in GT1.
That's definitely a big storyline. Thanks very much, Hayward. In qualifying, we did see Michael Lewis under that track record. Now, it has to be set to reset the track record in the race, but his fast time in qualifying, good enough for pole, a 1:34.961 in his Jaguar XKR. That is significantly under the existing class track record, a 1:35.750. And I think one of the things we're going to be keeping an eye on early is how these tires come up to temperature and whether or not we might see a new track record set this morning.
Yeah, we will. We'll be watching for that, because what I've learned about these Goodyears in particular is they take a little bit of time to come up to temperature. So it's a bit of managing the car, managing the tires to get there. I don't think we'll see lap records early on, maybe later on when the Goodyears come up to temp and then when the fuel loads burn off a little bit. Also interesting will be this battle of Lewis and Calvert on the opening laps, as Calvert actually in the Porsche Cup car is on the Yokohamas, not on the Goodyears. His tires probably coming in a little bit sooner than Lewis's will. So that'll be an interesting battle to watch in the opening laps.
It will, and we were talking before we came on air, for Preston Calvert, you think the opportunity to make a move is going to have to come early.
I do, and that has to do with those Goodyear tires taking a little bit longer to come up to their performance standard. And given that there is a bit of a delta in the qualifying times, I think Calvert's move is going to have to be early, and perhaps looking for that opening stint. It is a very chilly morning in Sonoma, and I think that maybe, if anything, plays a little bit to Calvert's strength. They have been qualifying in the mornings, but I think they were about the second group out in the mornings, not the first. So they're even earlier than they had been. The sun is just cresting over the horizon, and maybe Calvert's looking at trying to peek in like the sun over the hills, peek in behind Lewis and make a move.
What a beautiful scene. You just saw it there on the live stream of the sun coming up. A little bit of fog hanging over the area, but good news for these competitors. We saw some fog yesterday, and that did have an effect on the proceedings yesterday with a bit of a delay early in the day. The fog coupled with a power outage in the area kept everyone scrambling a little bit, trying to come up with solutions. The good news, everyone got the track time they needed, and track time is totally at a premium on a weekend like this.
It really is, and this, because it is such a driver's track, as well as being a bit of a high tire wear in some of the other classes, it's a matter of getting out there, getting the dial in on the car, but also the drivers who maybe not as familiar as some of the other ones. For example, like Preston Calvert coming across the country from Maryland. Yes, he does run a lot of different tracks. However, if you don't get the dedicated seat time on the West Coast, some of these other folks may have, that does put you at a bit of a disadvantage. So you need all that track time you needed at that premium to come out and get the setup and the technique around some of these corners.
A shot there of the beautiful Trans Am pace car, the official pace car of these SCCA RunOffs. Let's go back down to pit lane. Hayward's got another update for us.
Guys, GT1 rolling off the grid. Mike Lewis at the front of the field. You mentioned heat in the tires and what the ambient temperatures are like this morning. They're giving these guys 2 pace laps this morning to make sure everything gets up to temperature. That's more of a safety thing than anything else. Want to make sure they have nice grip for the first couple of laps of this race.
Good stuff. Thanks for the update, and stay warm down there. It is a brisk morning. It's amazing the variation in temperature throughout the day here in Northern California. It might start off chilly. You might want to wear a jacket here in the morning, but by the afternoon, you're starting to feel the heat, and then quite suddenly it goes back the other way towards the evening.
Yeah, this place is all about layers. You show up in the morning with about 5 layers on. About every hour, you take a layer off. You get to 4:30 in the afternoon, you start putting those layers quickly back on as that temp drops as soon as the sun goes behind the hillside.
Let's take a look at the starting grid for this GT1 National Championship RunOffs event. Don No from Arlington, Texas will line up at the 8th position in his Metro Coffee Group Ford Mustang. In the 7th spot, Rob Davis from Sonora, California. 6th place in the starting grid, Michele Abbate in her Chevrolet Monte Carlo. David Firsthand in the Firsthand Race Prepared Chevrolet Corvette will start 5th. 4th place, Kenneth Davis from Escondido, California, driving for Davis Motorsports in his Chevrolet Corvette. Michael Fine will start 3rd for AGS. That's the sponsor on that Chevrolet Camaro. 2nd is Preston Calvert from Potomac, Maryland, driving the Calvert Dynamics Phoenix Porsche 991-2 GT3 Cup car. And you heard it earlier on pole, Michael Lewis in dominating fashion. He's a Californian as well on Goodyear tires, driving a Jaguar XKR. Going for the track record, going for the championship as well. He came so close last year at Indianapolis, about a second shy, but a pretty good chance of claiming that coveted national championship today. A lot of pressure, but this is a guy who's been preparing for this moment ever since the checkered flag flew last year.
Yeah, absolutely. He did give up a good fight last year. Unfortunately, did come back in the silver medal, not the gold. I think he was kind of on a bit of a mission this year to come back on this West Coast. He's not a Northern California guy, but he is a West Coast guy. Really wants to put his stamp on this and to win his next championship, but certainly not his first. He's been at this quite a while, has Mike. I believe he's got, I think the number was 6 championships coming in. So very strong history. He's been at this game a very long time.
And that experience pays off, and also the fact that he is from California, perhaps a little bit of a home track advantage. It's interesting with the West Coast really not being represented on the RunOff schedule over the years a whole lot. This is just the 2nd time that the West Coast has hosted the RunOffs since the 60s. This provides an opportunity for people who maybe haven't had this chance before, and we have 100 rookies in the field, over 100 rookies in the field here this weekend across all of our various classes, and that's the cool thing, I think, about seeing the shift coming out to the West Coast and creating opportunities for more people to check this off that bucket list and maybe contend for a championship.
Yeah, it absolutely is a bucket list for a lot of drivers. Again, this is club racing. These folks have day jobs. They are here on the weekends. This is their hobby, and if you run up and down the West Coast, you know your West Coast competition, but when the RunOffs comes to town, it becomes your bucket list to get on it. Laguna a couple of years ago was a great venue for a great event. This, in my opinion, is a better driving venue than Laguna. Laguna has a bit more of the mystique, but here, the driving venue, and now you bring it as it's the championship event where people need to get out and get on this. And you're right, over 100 rookies, and I'd suspect about another 100 that are in only their second, some more of those West Coasters. And I tell you who I really feel bad for are the East Coasters that didn't come, because this venue and this track is as good as they get.
That's a great point. Let's talk about the facility. Officially 12 turns. There's a couple of sequences, 3 and 3A, also 8 and 8A, 9 and 9A, that kind of might count as 2 turns, but officially just the 1, and a ton of elevation change, blind corners, just about any challenge that a racetrack can throw at you, you've got it here at Sonoma.
You really do. As you come up through the sweep into 1, up into the hill crest as you go to 2, what you can't see is the exit of the corner at all. The apex is practically right on the summit of that corner. You go down through 3 and out through 3A, and what you get there is almost a roller coaster effect where the car compresses through the left-hander of 3 and rises through 3A, and again, you can't see the exit. And then if you can get out the exit, all it does is leave you with a downhill braking zone with another blind blind exit through 4, and that really, there's so many blind exit corners in the first half of the track, as opposed to the second half of the track. As you can see, the cars coming up into that turn 7 hairpin here. The second half is more about transition, and some of the drivers trying to set up for that transition in their car setups as you go in through 8, and there it's a varying radius, almost slalom-like as you go through this, but yet there's still elevation changes. 8A, the bottom just drops out, and you're trying to carry speed because as you get down through 9, it's probably the fastest part of the entire track, so you don't want to miss the exit coming out of 8A. You just try to set up for 10. Another blind corner is 10, and it's really one of those corners where you check up a little bit, take a deep breath, and hopefully you can make that through and not carry too much dirt on the exit. It's really kind of that excitement track where you can't see much, but you're hanging on every lap.
Getting close to lining up for the start of this event, the GT1 RunOffs National Championship race. Front row, Michael Lewis and Preston Calvert alongside now. The field coming into order behind that Trans Am pace car, which should be pulling off of the track here shortly. Field in good alignment coming through the turn 11 hairpin. Great passing zone on this circuit. And setting up now to head down the front straightaway to come to the green flag. Second row, Michael Fine and Kenneth Davis. Third row, David Firsthand and Michele Abbate. Field in alignment coming through turn number 12, looking for the green flag. They're picking up the pace, and we are racing from Sonoma Raceway. A great jump from Michael Lewis, jumping to the lead and sliding there into the second spot, I believe. We've got Kenneth Davis there and the number 66 machine. That's actually Michael Fine slipping up into second. Preston Calvert fighting back now at the top of the hill. He slides ahead, and perhaps a problem for Michael Fine, who's off course and falling off the pace after jumping to the second spot. Up front, though, it's Michael Lewis, and that's the picture-perfect start that he was looking for. Difficult start for Preston Calvert, and we do see Michael Fine has come to a stop there on the inside of the track. Disappointing for him, without a doubt. We'll try and get an update on what's happening there, but we stay green up front, at least for now. What do you make of the first harrowing sequence of corners?
Well, I think for Lewis, you're right. That was sort of the dream start to get that good launch, to get up into 2, and then to have Calvert kind of mixing it up there, not able to quite stay behind him. I think that's exactly what Lewis was trying to hope for, was to get a bit of that lead, an opportunity to get the heat in the tires. Calvert now is going to be on the chase to try and catch him. And I do wonder a little bit there if Fine really made that jump, but then found the tires were so cold as he tried to get through turn 3. I did see him off the track there. We'll try and get a report on exactly what happened there, but perhaps a little bit of trouble with these cold temps.
I'm sure Hayward will be checking that for us here shortly. So Michael Lewis pulling away from the field up front here as we come to the conclusion of the first lap. Back in the second and third positions, though, Preston Calvert, he's got his hands full. Michele Abbate making her debut, looking really, really racy. And that Chevrolet Monte Carlo, a great story, and putting a lot of pressure on a very experienced road racer, Preston Calvert, who's raced at the professional level, at a very high level, been very successful at that, now able to get a bit of space between himself and Abbate, headed into turn 1 and up the hill. How about that start, though, from Michele Abbate, coming from the 6th spot on the grid, and doing so pretty quickly. She was up on Preston Calvert's rear bumper in a pretty short amount of time.
Absolutely did. She took that opportunity she could to get it right up in. Now, she may be a RunOffs rookie. She's actually got some experience. She was the Western Conference champion in STU a couple of years back, her first year running that class. So now jumping into a little bit bigger, heavier cars here in GT1. Her goal was a podium, and right now running in that 3rd spot.
And speaking of heavier cars, the Chevrolet Monte Carlo she's driving, if it looks like an old late model stock car, well, there's a reason for it. Craig Roudman, who's a former crew chief and NASCAR Featherlight Series car builder, he built this car, built it specifically for road racing. So a little bit different in terms of the approach in building a car for road racing than you would for the short tracks that oftentimes you see a car like this competing on. And so far, Michele giving it a really good run up into the 3rd spot again from 6th on the grid. Great start from her. Preston Calvert, though, able to build a bit of a gap up at the front of the field here with 1 lap down. We are closing in on completing the second lap of this race. 19 currently to go. Up on the hat, you can see it there, brought to you by Mazda, our presenting sponsor for all of our web streams here this weekend at the RunOffs.
Yeah, look at the gap that that Calvert's starting to build a little bit over Abbate. I wonder how long that it's going to take for Abate's tires to really come in. As I mentioned, she's on that stock car, probably running on those good years. They will take a little bit more time to come up. So although she was pressing early, she might actually be in position to press later.
Looking at the timing and scoring screen now, after a couple of laps, you can see these things shuffling around on the hat at the top of your screen. Right now, Lewis with a big lead of over 6 seconds over Preston Calvert, 6.3 seconds the last time around. Abbate about 1.5 seconds back in the third spot, and we've got the 64 machine. That is Kenneth Davis running in fourth, 9.7 seconds off the race lead. Some bad news for those of you who have been following the progress of Michael Fine throughout the week so far. Looks like he has not completed a lap, so still looking for a bit of an update there on what exactly transpired, but apparently something more serious than just dealing with tire temperature early in the going, pulling off to the side of the road, and has not completed a lap so far. So disappointing, of course. In a race of this magnitude, you just want to get out there and turn laps. That's step number one, and unfortunately, that's not been the case so far for one of our competitors.
Yeah, the old phrase in racing is to finish first, you must first finish. He did make a couple of good moves there. I worry that maybe perhaps something had happened on the car there, braking the vehicle. Hopefully it wasn't just going in the grass there that caused that breakage. But no, that's really a rough way to end your runoffs.
What do you see so far in terms of watching these cars coming around the track? We talked so much about the tire temperatures being crucial, grip level at this track, especially in the cool temperatures here this morning, adding to the challenge for all the competitors on track. Are you seeing anything from the way the cars are slipping and sliding around, or do they look fairly well under control at this point?
It looks like we got a little of slip and sliding as well, and I think that's the way this track is. Everyone talks about how it's a low grip but high abrasion type of surface, and typically that's because cars are sliding in with these high horsepower. You're talking 600 plus horsepower in these cars. It's a delicate ballet of trying to keep that car pointed in the right direction, especially then you go up and over these hills. As you can see right there, Michele Abbate coming up that hill, there's a little bit of rear end check, and as you watch her, just barely touching the gas, and again, the rear sliding as they're coming off the four.
Abbate has slipped back a little bit in the last lap or so, and that has allowed the 66 car, Michael Fine, excuse me, that's not right, that is Ken Davis, the 64 car, to close the gap a little bit. Interesting, through that carousel section there, we saw both cars running different lines, and what a lot of the drivers have told me so far this weekend is that's one of those corners where you can do that, as we see Davis making a move to the inside of the hairpin, locking the tires a little bit, but getting the job done.
He does. He's able to make that stick on that inside. And that's a corner there where it's probably our best passing zone coming into 7, as it's the straightest straightaway we've got. If you're able to get a run off of 6, the question then is, it looks like he's able to make that stand, but some of the other classes perhaps it'd be a little tougher. You might be able to see some up and unders where if somebody gets you on the inside, they may push deep and not get the run down through 8.
So move Ken Davis up into the final podium position in the third spot in his Chevrolet Corvette. 5 runoffs appearances previously for Ken, including 1 in GT1. He finished second the last time the runoffs were out on the West Coast at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, formerly Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, back in 2014. So again, in position to perhaps finish on the podium, and now he's got the bit between his teeth trying to track down Preston Calvert.
Yeah, and he's definitely going to be moving up there quickly. Also looking now at First Dan making making a move also on Abbate as he's trying to close that gap. So her pace may be slipping just a hair.
Yeah, let's keep an eye on that battle. Had an interesting talk with First Dan earlier in this weekend, and that was just interesting to hear his perspective on the significance of this event. And that's a theme that runs true everyone you speak to, just the opportunity to run here. Some people are here to win a championship, some are here for the experience, and everyone, no matter what, this is something you have to do if you're a road racing enthusiast and someone who spent some time behind the wheel.
Yeah, you absolutely do. You've got to get out here. You've got to be running at this track. It really is, as we mentioned earlier, one of the best venues, not just on the West Coast, but really in all of North America, as it's such a challenge for drivers as well as engineers to get the setup, and to combine that with the mystique of the runoffs. It just presents a great opportunity and a dream for a lot of these drivers.
And taking a look there at David Firsthand, who was able to make that move, get up into the 4th position. This is a guy with a ton of experience, hailing from Fort Worth, Texas. 17 runoff appearances, all in this class. His best finish was 4th back in 2011 at Road America. He told me he's attended every runoffs but 3 since 1996. And again, this is an event that's moved around a lot, not always local, and so to keep a streak like that up, it shows you just what this means to the competitors, the long haul that it takes, taking time off work, everything that goes into it to be a part of the SCCA runoffs.
It does take that kind of planning as amateur racers to be able to trailer yourself all the way across to places like Daytona, Mid-Ohio, Road America, and Wells here, the East Coast is coming to the West Coast. It does take a bit of a commitment. It becomes a complete lifestyle that if you're going to do it, you just go in, head first. They say dive in head first and make sure that this is your dream to go to all of them. You see people making that dream. It becomes a family reunion of sorts as folks don't see each other all year round. They stay in their conference, they run their own races, but then they come together at the runoffs, and that's sort of the beauty of it as a championship event, that those who are dedicated to it and drive across the country now have a big family reunion for this week here in October.
There's Michael Lewis on your screen, the late race leader by nearly 15 seconds the last time around in that beautiful Jaguar XKR, the black and orange paint scheme with the flames on the side, and fittingly so. That car is tearing up the track. We talked in the open about the chase for the track record, and so far we have not seen laps in that range. In fact, times considerably slower than what we've seen in qualifying. Is that conditions? Is that setting the car up for a different need in the race? Some combination of the two?
Yeah, I don't think he really needs to push right now. He may just be managing the car a bit, obviously with a lead of a significant amount here. He's not really too concerned as the position now, but if he's going to try and make that move for the track record, as his crew chief, Joe Gelder, had said, he's probably going to wait a little later as the fuel load comes down and gets those tires up. We may see somewhere around lap 17, something like that. He may try to make a push for it at that point. But it's a tough lap record. If you look at it, it's a 2006. This record's been standing for a very long time. There's been a lot of great drivers to come to this track and not been able to do it. I think Michael Lewis certainly is one of the ones who's most well suited and has the right equipment and the right skills to do it. Does he have the right conditions as well? And not having a push of anybody behind him may hurt him a little bit, because if you don't need to, obviously you want to be just a hair conservative and bring the car home and win that goal.
Yeah, it's a good point, and certainly that balance of going for the national championship and trying to set that track record, that is definitely a balance to be struck. Let's go back down to pit lane. Hayward's got an update for us with Kurt Resitano.
Guys, I'm with Kurt Resitano, who's crewing for Preston Calvert in the second place car at the moment. Kurt, a lot of variety in these cars on track. What's different about Preston's car?
Preston's car, in comparison to what's out front right now, is a tube chassis Trans Am type car, 900 horsepower. Preston's driving a car that doesn't even make 500 horsepower. It's a unibody construction, factory-built Porsche race car.
You said this. Your guys are still waiting a little bit on the tires to come in, right?
Yeah, we started him on stickers just because we want the car to be there at the end. So we're hoping Michael out front will, use his Goodyears up a little bit, and our Yokohamas will come in, once he gets a little bit of heat in them. There should be a crossover right around 10 laps.
Excellent. And these conditions, it's really tough for that Jaguar to make power, right?
Oh, yeah. He's making all the horsepower right now, but so are we, so that's a good thing. Everybody's on the same track, so it seems like he's catching up a little bit now, so we'll just see how it goes the last 10 laps.
Thanks a lot, Kurt.
Preston Calvert making a little bit of headway. He has that lead down to just a shade under 12 seconds at this point. 13 laps to go. Preston's a guy with a wealth of experience in racing at the SCCA level. He's raced at the pro level, as I said, a race winner in World Challenge this year in class, and running a lot of cars here this weekend too, it's worth noting. And when there is not a whole lot of track time in any car, I have to imagine, is valuable when sessions are basically 20 minutes in the build-up to the races.
Yeah, getting limited track time does put a bit of a challenge to you to be able to lay down the quick time in the car. However, the other way to look at this is if you're driving a variety of cars, you get a variety of perspectives on the same track. You might actually drive a car like the rear-engine Porsche and then come back into the front-engine rear-drive Corvette later on and find out that, I could probably try one technique on the other car and see if that works. So he's still getting the seat time, but he's getting it in multiple cars. The challenge is, can you get one car set up So from a driver's perspective, he's in good shape. It's getting the single car because he's just not getting quite the focus that he's trying to jump between cars.
He has the added advantage of having the Phoenix team behind him, an outstanding team with a rich pedigree. What they've done in this event and in racing, really road racing across the board in North America, speaks for itself. And I imagine that has to make the challenge of jumping back and forth that much easier with the support system that he has.
It really does. You can be sharing data and information, knowledge, and that team, it really is the highest level I think we've got here at the RunOffs and Club Racing, that they are just one large team. And you see just down the road here from where we're sitting, they've got their paddock set up with about 12 cars just lined up under those canopies. And you just walk by, and if you look, every one of those is a front runner in its class.
And there's a reason for that, that's for sure. 8 laps complete. We've got Lewis up front, followed by Calvert and Davis. That is Ken Davis running in the 3rd spot. 5th place goes to David Firsthand right now. Michele Abbate has slipped back into the 5th position after challenging up close to the 2nd spot early on in this race. So it settled out just a little bit, still not exactly sure what took place to take the race away effectively from Michael Fine in the 66 car, who had an issue, if you're just joining us, on the very first lap in the first sequence of corners coming up the hill towards turn number 2, it appeared, pulled off to the inside of the track, and we have not seen him complete a lap yet. So if you're looking for an update there, we've got a battle on screen right now. It's heating up for the 3rd position as Firsthand has been able to track down Davis side by side into the hairpin over at turn 7. For now, Davis has been able to hold off, but definitely the best battle on the track right now. And we've seen the number 64 of Davis locking up that right front a little bit a few times. He did it in the pass of Abbate a few laps ago, and seeing it again here. And now the pressure very much on from Firsthand, coming side by side down into turn number 11. Last of the late breakers, it goes to Firsthand, who looks like he's going to be able to take the position and does so. So a nice drive through the field, very patient from Firsthand, now up in medal contention in the 3rd spot.
Yeah, great move there. He'd been pressuring him. He'd been in his mirrors there for about a lap or so. And like you mentioned, getting a right front lock up there. That's really starts to build. If you keep doing that over the course of a couple of laps and into the race, suddenly you've got that flat spot that always seems to find itself in the same place as you continue to do it. And so you're able to see Firsthand there, able to take advantage of it.
Talked a little bit about him earlier, coming all the way from Fort Worth. He told me it was about an 1,800-mile trip to get here to Sonoma. And it's an interesting story about this car as well. He's had it for 4 years, but he hasn't raced it for 2. Because of lengthy repairs. Had an issue a few years ago, and it's just been a process to get it back and get it ready. And so, speaking with him, he said, maybe don't expect a quick start out of me, and we'll let this go as the race comes along. And, hey, we've seen that play out so far, a really solid effort moving through the field, and it's got to be nice to be back behind the wheel of a car that you've been working on now for a handful of years.
It is very satisfying when you sit there and every week you go out to your garage, every day you go out to the garage, you see it, it's on the jack stands, the body works off and it's not ready, and you do this for 2 years. It sort of gets you very anxious, so that I'm sure that drive was a very short drive for him, even though several, 1,000 miles or more, almost 2,000 miles. I'm sure he was so anxious it felt like it just flew by in about 10 minutes.
Told me his goal was to get on the podium. So far, so good on that account, running in the 3rd spot. Meanwhile, up front, the lead has been trimmed a little bit. Calvert has got the lead down under 10 seconds now with 10 laps to go. Lewis out in front by 9.4 seconds the last time around. Any reason to be concerned, or is this a driver intelligently conserving his equipment with the big picture in mind?
Well, as Resentano had said, perhaps that these Yokohama tires start to come in around lap 10, and here we are at lap 10. He is turning faster laps. The last time through is about 0.7 of a second quicker. That's quite a bit. A lot of that there was in the 2nd sector, and then I see the following lap, he's again quicker in the 1st sector. So he is picking up chunks. I'm sure that the team for Lewis is on the radio with him, letting him know where Preston Calvert is. Calvert, though, seems to be pushing now with the low 39s on his lap times.
If you're in Lewis's position, do you want to know that Preston Calvert is getting closer, or would you rather just focus on your job?
I think you want to know. I think you want to know if you're looking for a target gap to maintain. Clearly, you don't want to be having him fill your mirrors if you have that ability to control the race, but you would like to know perhaps he's got a target pace of where he wants to be in front of him. But of course, they're all trying to shoot for the full 20 laps, so he's got to make sure that he's still hitting his mark, saving his tires, and reaching the end of the race. So he's going to try and maybe be conservative but be quick, as opposed to being, backing off entirely. Will Mike Lewis? He's going to try and maintain some pace and probably looking for about a 5 to 7 second gap at a minimum.
Nice shot by our crew a few moments ago showing the gap, what exactly 9.4 seconds looks like, as we saw Lewis come through the picture, and then a little bit later Calvert entering. Let's see as they come around now, and indeed that gap has closed even further. What was that, about 9/10 of a second coming off the lead? So with 9 laps to go, not a math major here, but less than 9 seconds to close, and about a second a lap is what we've seen Calvert being able to chip off of that advantage. That tells me if things continue like they will, and there's no guarantee that's going to be the case, we might have a battle on our hands by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, Calvert's doing exactly what I think his plan was. Maybe wanted to stay a little closer earlier, but now knowing that he's got some car coming to him, the race coming to him, he's going to push and push. And again, personal best is Sector 1 last time through, about a half a second quicker than Lewis. So he's chipping away. As you mentioned, he's got to do this round. About a second a lap is what he needs. Well, if you pick up a half a second in the first sector, that puts you on that pace, as I'm sure Lewis now knows that the gap is now under 8 seconds.
Of course, it's one thing to get there. It's another thing entirely to get around. And a guy the caliber of Mike Lewis up at the front of this field, he's not going to be an easy one to get by when a national championship is on the line. So it's another thing to keep in mind. But Preston Calvert doesn't need to worry about that right now. His goal is just to get there.
He's got to get there, fill his mirrors, and see what happens. But you mentioned Lewis. Yeah, obviously, no, this is not his first rodeo, for example. I think I mentioned earlier he's got 6. Actually, he has 8 runoff championships under his belt. He's tied for 6th most all time, so he's certainly one of the most experienced winners we've got in the field. In fact, he's hoping to kind of break a tie for 6th and get up into the 5th spot. And some of the folks he's tied with are names like Andrew Aquilante, Andy McDermott, Kent Prather. He's trying to catch up with the Huffackers and Heinrichs, and you hear those kinds of names. Those are the pinnacle of club racing in the Sports Car Club of America. So that's where the position that you see Lewis is in.
We'll talk more about that in a moment. Just looking at timing and scoring, I've seen that David Firsthand has slipped down to the 7th spot. He was just running up in 3rd. Not exactly sure what the cause of that might be, but we'll keep an eye on it as he's shown now a lap and a half down effectively to the leader, as we see Lewis entering lap traffic here, making his way around approaching, I should say, Davis, who's actually, yes, that's right, that is Davis running in the 4th position. So interesting to see already, making his way about halfway up through the field, Michael Lewis dealing with lap traffic, and that could be another opportunity for Preston Calvert to get closer. He's 8 seconds back the last time around.
Yeah, and he is cutting the lead pretty quickly. However, the lap traffic is a big part, because if you're Lewis, you're in the lead, you don't want the lap traffic to be the reason you throw it away, so you're going to be a little bit more conservative. But perhaps if you're Preston Calvert, you might be a little more aggressive with that lap traffic, knowing that you're the dog chasing the rabbit a little bit here, and he may be trying to find whatever little bit about where he might have opportunities and using that lap traffic to his advantage.
Replay here of what took place with the 05 David Firsthand. This car, we just talked about it, went through all those repairs, and it appears something mechanical perhaps on that car as it pulls off the racing line. A heads-up move by David Firsthand there to keep the track clear and make sure this race stays green. These officials do a great job of that as much as they can, because it's so important to have the track time in these races. They do everything they can to ensure we stay green as long as we can. As up front, the gap between the leader and second place has closed down to 6.4 seconds now with 7 laps to go. A lot of slide at the back of that Jaguar there that we see from Lewis. He's got his hands full, it seems, especially with rear grip.
Yeah, he is definitely pushing. And that slide, as he came across 3A, I thought I saw a little bit of dirt come up. Perhaps one of the other cars is pulling some of that dirt on. Very possible the exit of 3A, where it's a downhill, off camber as you crest that hill. A lot of cars do tend to run wide. He may have just seen some of that. Again, that's that little bit that kind of, as a driver, might get into your head a little and say, I can't lose pace. And you see the dirt, you get a little bit of slide. Again, now you start thinking about what's happening behind you as the lead now is down under 7 seconds.
Yes, absolutely, and the pressure begins to mount. The handling perhaps going away just a little bit. You saw the slides coming through the carousel there, turn number 6, and then a hard time getting that car to the apex in turn number 7 for Michael Lewis. Nursing that lead, Preston Calvert chipping away. Some quotes from Michael Lewis earlier in this week about this car. which has been so successful. He's been on tons of podiums in the runoffs with this Jaguar XKR. He said, frankly, it's a bit long in the tooth. In a quote to Sports Car Magazine, he said that it doesn't quite have the pace of some of the newer cars, but he's really relying on home field advantage, if you will, a relative local to this facility, and hoping that that might be enough to carry him through. So far, so good, but as Preston Calvert comes by, we'll wait for timing and scoring to update for us. And it looks like that gap is down to 5.7 seconds now, so a little bit of progress. Not sure if it's going to be enough with 6 laps to go. It's going to be tight.
He's definitely on the pace we talked about. When there was 9 to go, he was 9 seconds.
Yep.
Now we're about 6 to go. He's under 6 seconds. He's still at that pace, chipping away of almost a full second per lap. He can certainly see Lewis in front of him. And now as the chaser, you're just fixated on that mark in front of you, and you can see it. You can almost smell it and taste it.
Michael Lewis looking for his 6th national championship in this class in GT1. He won as long ago as 1995 at Mid-Ohio. 21 appearances in the runoffs for Michael Lewis, 16 in this class, on the podium 12 times in his 21 runoffs appearances. Speaks volumes for what he's been able to accomplish, and remarkable that as the years go by, it seems like he just gets faster.
He does, and in fact, he's also got the skill set to have a wide variety of cars. We're actually going to see him in the GT3 race later this weekend, and guess what? He's on pole for that race as well. That's going to be a very exciting race with he and Colin Jackson kind of reincarnating an old battle that they had about 20, 30 years ago in these same 2 cars. They're going to bring that together here this weekend at Sonoma, but it shows you the range of skills that someone like Mike Lewis has to take a very high horsepower GT1 car and put it on pole, and then turn around and take a GT3 car, which does not have that kind of power, and do the same thing.
Really fascinating and impressive performances so far through qualifying, so far through this race. 5 laps to go. We're 3/4 of the way through here at Sonoma Raceway in the GT1 National Championship runoff. And it's Lewis by 5.3 seconds now over Calvert. So Preston able to make some gains, but significantly less than what we've seen in really the last 10 laps or so.
Yeah, I think Lewis now is trying to make sure that he holds this lead. Now we're at that 5-lap mark, 38.3. He's starting to get back to the pace that he started the race at. Calvert, though, continues to press quicker at a 37s, but now the margin only about 4/10 on that lap, not the full second that Preston Calvert really needs.
So we'll see what can happen here. We still potentially have some lap traffic to deal with for our leader as the race goes along. Just keeping an eye on how that car handles into the naked eye. It just seems like it's become more and more of a handful as the race has gone along. That's really something that we've come to expect talking to the drivers throughout the week. The way that this track is, the low grip level, a lot of sliding of the tires, and high tire temperatures is what we're seeing as a result.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that as tires almost get a bit greasy with all the sliding the cars are doing on this surface. It seems to be, perhaps it's a surface temperature issue, but all the cold mornings you wouldn't expect it, but it still seems to be. It really just grabs those tires. They kind of, not grabbing it in a good way, but it kind of lets them slide across it, and it creates more of that slipping, sliding, where the friction slide almost is causing the heat as opposed to kind of grabbing into the pavement.
It puts an emphasis on car control. It puts an emphasis on car setup, and it seems like it's a challenge that the drivers enjoy. Calvert chipping away, but not that much that time, just a couple of tenths off the lead, and so now this lead seems to have stabilized at just a little over 5 seconds from Lewis back to Calvert with 4 laps to go. And the last 2 laps, now what we've seen, Preston Calvert maybe not having the pace needed to run down Lewis, and it makes you wonder if Michael might have had something in the bag that he was holding in reserve.
Yeah, a little of that. I think Preston Calvert may have kind of plateaued a bit. His teammate there had said that perhaps his tires might come in around lap 10. Well, we just hit this lap 16 point where perhaps he may have plateaued the car. He had done a 37.9 last time by a 38.1, not quite making the improvements, whereas Lewis now is bringing his pace down closer to where his personal best early in the race with 37.5, but back in the last time by a 38.2. So Lewis is trying to now hit those marks and hold that advantage. I think I mentioned earlier, we're kind of speculating maybe he was targeting that 5 to 6 second margin. That's where he sits right now. So as we watch sector times, Calvert's chipping away, not full half seconds, but he's still getting about a 2/10 per but he really needs to be taking chunks if he wants to have a shot at this.
Time starting to become an issue for Preston Calvert. Meanwhile, Michael Lewis is looking at that lap count and loving what he's seeing. Coming around to complete another lap. There'll be 3 to go at the line for Michael Lewis. There's the gap right there on your screen. Lewis to Calvert. It is closing, but it's closing rather slowly. We do have an update. It appears that Don No has pulled to pit lane and appears to perhaps be out of this race. So that could see now a handful of cars, at least 3 to our knowledge, that have hit some issues. That's a tough break for the Arlington, Texas native who's making his 4th runoffs appearance, all in this class. Finished 6th back in 2015 at Daytona in his debut with in the runoffs, I should say. Told me that he just wanted to make it to the checkered flag, and it looks like might come up a couple laps short. So tough break for our 8th place starter, Don No.
But taking a look at Michele Abbate, is right now she's running in that 3rd spot. She did say this week, obviously, podium was the target. Right now in a position for that, a bit of a lead. She's about 50 seconds ahead of Davis there. A couple laps to go, but certainly, as you mentioned, that attrition is going to play a part this whole weekend. It's a very difficult track, not just on drivers, but it's difficult on car endurance. These curbs are a little bit unusual. There's a bit of a dip and a rise, a little bit tall, so these cars a little bigger, more robust, may not be knocking their suspensions apart by hitting curbs, but attrition will play a part. There are some bumps in this place that kind of shakes things around, so if a car is going to have an issue, this place will find it.
Michele Abbate a few moments ago doing the sportsman-like thing, making sure that she did not obstruct Lewis on his way through to put a lap on our 3rd place runner. Now Preston Calvert will approach the back bumper of Michele Abbate. Last time around, the gap was 4.3 seconds from 1st to 2nd. We'll see what it is this time, as Lewis did have to deal with lap traffic early in the lap. Preston now dealing with it here, swinging to the outside of Abbate. Looks like he might have been held up just a little bit. The gap was down to 3.4 seconds, but that was before we got to turn 1, and that was not the preferred line for Preston Calvert.
It's not, but I think for Michele, it's a difficult spot to pull off line anywhere, because turn 1 is really just a bent sweeper that goes uphill and there's bumps. And if you're in a very big, high horsepower car, the stock car that she's running, you really don't want to step off of your line if you don't have to. So what she did appear to do is she got into the corner, pulled to the inside where it's smoother, and tried to get Preston Calvert that outside so he can continue his chase.
Saw Preston Calvert drop a wheel or two off the curbing there on the left side a few corners ago. It's one of the things about this track. If you drop a wheel, everyone knows about it because it's so dusty.
It is absolutely dusty. So what they do to try and manage that here at the track is every night they do wet down those areas at the exit of those corners, try and keep that down during the day, which means the first group out in the morning, the first time you go in, you actually might be in more of a clay mud. But then at about the end of that first race here, as we're seeing, it's a lot more dust coming back up. They also do scrub the track at nights here. So this is a well-maintained facility.
We're coming around to take the white flag here in our GT1 National Championship race. Out front, Michael Lewis showing the way, the local from California. We've got over 100 Californians in our field of 500-odd drivers here this weekend. It's clearly a bit of a homecoming for them, the rare opportunity to race on home soil, and a bit of pride as well, you have to imagine, to defend home soil against the interlopers coming in from around the country. And this is truly a international event with folks coming from Canada as well, and it is a field of some of the very best in club racing from around the country, and for the Californians to be able to defend the home track against the best of the rest, I think that means a great deal.
Yeah, Lewis still pushing. We are 1 to go, but he's still pushing the limits, trying to make sure he doesn't leave an opening for Calvert to come, and probably just doesn't want to get out of that rhythm. Sometimes as a driver, you get to the end and you know you may have what appears to be imminent victory in your hands. If you start backing off, you actually start to make mistakes. So as a driver, you just want to continue to hit those marks.
So about halfway through this final lap, exiting the carousel, turn number 6 onto the drag strip portion, and then off of the drag strip as they head down into turn number 7, another hairpin corner here. Michael Lewis out in front, the Goodyear shod Jaguar XKR making his way around turn number 7 into 7A. Now through those fast S's, you talked about him in the open, blind, scary, challenging, still an important challenge ahead as Lewis tries to clinch yet another championship in this GT1 class. Last year's runner-up by about a second in Indianapolis. and he's one corner sequence away, 11 and 12, from winning the championship in 2018. Michael Lewis around corner number 11 onto the front stretch. He'll make that left-hand turn around the bend, headed to the checkered flag. And Michael Lewis, twin checkers out, wins the GT1 National Championship. Preston Calvert comes home in the second spot. Michele Abbate a ways back in position to round out the podium in third. But a tour de force from Michael Lewis, who led flag to flag, basically unchallenged. Preston Calvert did his best and made it interesting. It was 2.2 seconds at the line, but it was all Michael Lewis in this race today. Well
you really
done.
felt like Michael Lewis was in control of that race. He got that good start as Preston Calvert. A little bit of traffic. Somebody tried to make that move on him early. He was able to get back in his rhythm, but by the time he did, it seemed it was already up to about a 12-second lead. And then Preston Calvert tried to push, but at that point, Michael Lewis just controlled the race, controlled his pace, make sure he saved the car for the end. And even at the end, you can see he's still turning relatively quick laps to it only looks like a 2.2-second win, but really I think he controlled that.
Absolutely appeared that way. Congratulations to the Californian Michael Lewis, the first champion of the 2018 runoffs. And well done indeed, dominating this race today. Hayward will have an interview with our champion and also our podium finishers in a little while. What, if anything, do we learn from this race that might apply to the weekend as a whole?
I think it's that managing the tires. I really do. I think we saw it here. Although it's a cold morning, it took time to get the tires up to temp. It's really all about the duration of a 20-lap race to try and get the tires. You don't want to use them up in the first couple of laps. You want to make sure that you have something left in the tank, because had Michael gone out there and tried to really build a huge lead and try to get out 30, 40 seconds ahead of the field, I'm sure his tires would have gone away and suddenly his lap times wouldn't have been there at the end, and Preston Calvert might have had more of a shot. But it's also, I just thought the interesting race here, it's not only two very well skilled driver, but two very different cars, as you've got your classic GT1 car with the tube frame, silhouette body, against a classic, just the Porsche Cup car behind him, which is a unibody car. A lot less power, but actually at the end running very similar pace.
And we talked at the Open about the chase for a new track record. Probably the win comes as plenty of consolation for Michael Lewis, but he was under that track record in qualifying, couldn't find the pace here this morning, didn't really need to, but also conditions maybe not so favorable.
Yeah, their qualifying times the previous mornings was a little bit later in the morning than this race time. Now running, of course, with a 20-lap fuel load. A lot of that plays into part, and then not really needing to. It is about winning the race. You don't come here to win pole, you come here to win races, and that's exactly what Mike Lewis just did.
Any impressive performances from deeper in the field that stand out to you?
Yeah, I think Michele Abbate, she had come into this really hoping to have that podium spot, and she absolutely was able to pull that off. She ran very strong, very consistent, trying to manage what appeared to be a very difficult to handle car. As you could imagine, having multiple hundreds of horsepower in a car like that, to get that car through the race and come home with a bronze medal is a great performance.
Well, our apologies due to some technical difficulties. We will not be able to speak to our podium finishers. But Larry, your final thoughts on our GT1 championship race?
I think it's a great way to kick off a wonderful weekend as you see someone like a veteran like Michael Lewis come out here and really take a stranglehold of this championship. I think it's a great battle. It shows that the skills, the experience at a track like this truly pays off. And I think it's setting us up for other races to come later in the weekend, and even someone like Michael Lewis actually competing again later on. But I think it a lot of shows it really is the great competition here in these classes. Michael
Lewis, for the sixth time, a champion in the GT1 category, adding to his list of accolades in the SCCA RunOffs. We'll see more of him later in the weekend, but a fantastic way to kick off our runoffs in 2018 at Sonoma Raceway. For Hayward Wagner down in pit lane, Larry the Cloud with me here in the booth, I'm Ryan Marine saying so long. Thanks for watching the SCCA RunOffs presented by Mazda.
So you told us earlier in the week that you wanted to stand on the podium. You get to do that right now. How does it feel?
Can you say that one more time? It just sounds so good. This is unbelievable. My first runoff. I have to thank it all the teammates and the put this car, racing a stock car against these badass Porsches and the Jaguar. I'm just so stoked. I'm so proud. My team's the best. They're all doing a great car, and I just cannot believe I'm standing here right now. Hi, Dad. I know you're watching.
Tell Tell me about what it's like to drive this car on this racetrack. This cannot be an easy car.
You know, I maybe have 2 hours in this car. It doesn't really brake that great, and it doesn't really like to turn, but man, it's wicked fast.
Like when you walk up the stands, the pit motor.
I'm telling you, this car's making me a really good driver. You gotta look out for this. I'm
Cannonball for you.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
More guys come back past you, but there you hang on as they dropped off. I think when you showed up, the big thing is you wanted to land on podium, and here you are. Tell me about being on podium at your very first RunOffs.
You know what? I just keep saying it, man. I can't believe I'm here. This is unreal. I have an amazing team behind me, and we just stuck to racing the track. Didn't care who passed us, who was behind us. Just drive the track, be consistent. Thank you, Cal Club. You know, all the workers. I am just so proud to stand here right now. It's unbelievable.
Awesome. Is there anybody else you feel you need to thank for being here? Any anything like that?
Of course, absolutely. I wouldn't be here without Tim Adelson, my car owner, team owner, my teammate. He's put me in this car and really believed in me for the last few years. Craig Rodman Racing, he almost won it back in '96 in the Featherlight NASCAR race, and he really gave me a good car. I can't believe how well it drove. And my husband, man, I wouldn't be here without my husband, Anthony, so absolutely. And I just want to say hi to my mom and dad because they're watching from home.
Awesome, awesome. All right, we're going to bring cheers for our 3-time finishers here, Michelle, Preston, and Michael. Let's spray that sparkling water. Woo!
Come on, Michelle, come on, get it! Get the small guy, get the small guy.
Let's hear it, crowd. Give him a big round of applause. Soak it in, Anthony. Right?
Whatever it takes.
What is that? That's old people. She's probably out Prepare yourself for an emotional wreck, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one before she was famous.
Oh, there you go.